Yes,
Here we go. Is
yes, boy. How we
that
doing?
working all right?
I don't
Yeah,
know.
all right.
I don't know what's happening there at my end, mate. Your Instagram must like me better than my own does. Right, we're here now. We got it eventually. So, for anyone who is watching at the moment, I am actually going to host this, but unfortunately, my Instagram wasn't playing ball. Today, we're just going to quickly introduce ourselves, and then we have four key topics that we want to run through. Number one is kind of diet culture and the negative impacts of that. There's then five pieces of advice that I, as a nutritionist, would kind of give to improve your relationship with food, which may also facilitate weight loss if that's what you wanted. Then we're going to move on to point three, which is body image, and then we're going to finish with a kind of conversation around a better way of thinking. Right. So I'll introduce myself first as what was meant to be the host. So for anyone on James's end who doesn't know me, my name's Sam. I'm a qualified nutritionist and I focus a lot with working on relationships with food, improving awareness around food, and basically getting people away from the diet cycle and the awful kind of mental aspects that can come with that, which James knows all too well. So do you want to quickly introduce yourself as well, mate?
Yeah. So obviously, although I'm hosting it, obviously for the people that are from your side of the live, obviously my name is James Roffey. I suffered with an eating disorder for 10 years, from the age of 17 to 27. So I'm now 8 years on, 35 now. So obviously I've had 8 years of recovery, is probably the easiest way to put it. So essentially, obviously, the purpose of this live, you've got the theory-based side from you, and then there's obviously like the practical element of how bad diet cultures can be and how being misinformed, and obviously that can lead to potential disordered eating and eating disorders. So yeah, I think we've kind of got like a double pronged
Yeah.
attack to things. So yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a great way of summarizing it. Obviously, I have that theory to my qualification. I work with predominantly women to break that cycle down. But what you've got, obviously, you're in the industry. You're a personal trainer
Yep.
in there, and you obviously have that kind of internal experience that we're going to really tap into, which is why I wanted to host this and kind of probe your brain with that. But let's start then with diet culture, right? Point one. And I was thinking about this and I took some notes, right? And I want to introduce this straight off by reminding people that the original term of a diet was your normal habitual way of eating. That is like a definition. Like, and then the irony is over the last, whatever, 50 years, the culture around weight loss and the money that can be made by that has kind of hijacked this term diet, ironically, into the exact opposite of what it was meant to be. So
Yep.
it was meant to be a normal way of eating. Now it's a short-term way of eating that's totally different most of the time than the way you were supposed to eat, in a way to lose weight. Would you agree with that kind of rationale?
Yeah, I think essentially that is completely spot on. I think that the term diet, I think it's kind of the original use of it is kind of what is now coined as like lifestyle, like your lifestyle choices, etc. And it's like, yeah, I think it's obviously people have tackled industries and I call them charlatans. Is probably the easiest way to put it. Have obviously tapped into the diet culture, and obviously have reframed it to be like a marketing gimmick. That's all it is.
Money. Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we've discussed this in our own time, James, obviously we established that it's a short-term way of thinking, and generally the business relies on the general public's lack of nutritional awareness, often their perceived desperation
Yep.
to lose weight because of social pressures, which we'll talk about later on, the body image point. And they rely on failure because then people keep going back to more diets and make money, right?
Essentially, that's exactly it. Like you look at all the different fads that go on, they all have different elements to the diet, but essentially they keep you from that truth. I think you've got the individual, the consumer, you've got the educational journey, and then you have the person in the middle, and they keep you from the truth. So ultimately, you just a loop.
Yeah.
That loop cycle of, oh, that didn't work, I'll try another fad, and you never ever reach the point of education, empowerment, and knowledge going forward, whereby you don't need anyone, because otherwise all these businesses would cease to exist. So yeah.
You're right. It's autonomy, isn't it? And I think all these different diets try and respin the wheel of weight loss. Like we all know that weight loss, or more specifically fat loss, is a game of calories. And that I always say to people, the physiology of fat loss is simple, right? We eat less calories than we burn than we need, but the psychology, that's the difficulty.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is these diet cultures or diet brands try and respin that wheel that will never change and impose unnecessary restrictions along the way, like carbs are bad, sins, shapes,
Yeah.
and that then fuels that cycle. And also, as you know very personally, mate, and I see with my clients, it drives disordered eating and poor relationships with food, right?
100%. 100%. I say that's the issue. I think in terms of the fads, there'll always be that quick fix, that quick initial weight loss. It won't be fat loss. It's majority of it will be weight loss, because whatever the fad is, it will always be cutting out fat or cutting out carbs, and it's like, oh, I've lost all this weight in 2 weeks. Well, of course you fucking have, because you've cut out like a third of what you normally eat. Like, unless you're eating like loads of extra protein or loads of extra fat because you've cut out all the carbs, like you're going to create like a third deficit of what you're eating. So of course you're going to lose weight. And then that's how this gimmick carries on. Oh, look at Sandra. She's lost 14 stone. Yeah, but she's not learned anything, and she's fucking miserable. Like, she doesn't. And then as soon as you come out of that fad, what have you learned?
Well, we
Nothing.
have weight regain,
Yeah,
don't we? Obviously,
exactly that. And then you're back in the cycle. You either rejoin the group, or you try something else, and like you never ever reach that point of where you go, you know what, I'm educated enough now that I don't need anybody else. I can do this on my own. And obviously, yeah, it all goes back to, like you said, the business model. It's about getting your money.
Yeah, I agree with that. So basically, we've agreed that that diet cycle exists culturally, financially. And don't get me wrong, James, I always remind clients, like, we have to be compassionate. The world we live in, like, there is absolutely nothing inherently wrong with what we call hyperpalatable foods. So that's your less nutritious foods, like
Yep.
your chocolate, your pizza. Like, we should all be eating those in a flexible, moderate amount. But
Yep.
they are engineered at the end of the day to be hard to say no to. And when we have these diets that then throw a load of restrictions on them, people then end up over consuming on them, not just because of their hyperpalatable nature, but that perceived restriction drives things into a binge, which we'll discuss later in more detail, especially with you. But I think, in essence, and what we're saying here is diet culture prize on vulnerable people who are desperate to align to subjective norms, which we'll talk about in the body image section. And we need to start getting people away from these and moving them into a space where it's more behavior based, and they're having more often like mental tools of unpicking their food awareness. Okay, which kind of takes me now onto point 2 of 4 that I wanted to go through, and this is 5 pieces of advice, right? And I want your input when I say these as well, James. And there's many pieces of advice, so I was really trying to go at the most important ones. And number 1 is food morality, and that is in essence identifying a food as good or bad. And I think there's lots of phrases that are brought up in culture. From a young age, we hear our parents like, oh, you're being good today, you're having that food, or that's a treat, or that's a cheat. And all these things identify as morality, and quite often I find people then attach their self-worth to it, their body image, and even the success of their day can be defined on the morality of food. And I always kind of tongue-in-cheek joke that you should feel guilty for like stealing grandma's handbag, right? Or for burning down an orphanage, something awful like this. You should not feel guilty for eating any food. And do you think, would you resonate that on a personal level when you were going through your issues?
Oh, massively. Like I said, that was the thing, and I think there's still elements of it today. I think in terms of like I train 4 or 5 days a week, and I can now say my wife. It sounds weird I say that. But thank you very much, thank you. But yeah, on Saturday evenings, if we don't go out for a meal, we'll always get a takeaway, and it's kind of like it's like you've worked really hard in the week, whether that be through like in work or in yourself through physical activity, that you almost feel like I've earned it. but obviously, like you said, it's still like it's not. I kind of think, oh, I've earned it. I've done a lot this week. I've had a busy week. I'm going to reward myself. But it's like I still have the kind of that notion, and I think it is obviously something that is it's drummed into you by your parents, by society, and obviously it probably isn't. It probably isn't a healthy, like rational way of thinking. But I think, like you said, it's become the social norm. But away from that, obviously, when my eating disorder really like took over and like the first 18 months of it was anorexia, so it was the complete restriction of food, and what I did eat was it was like literally the chicken, broccoli, and rice. It was white pasta with a little bit of broccoli and tuna steaks. That was literally the only meal that I would eat, because I deemed it as clean, as healthy. And then obviously then after the 18 months and I went into the bulimia, it was all the foods that I demonized when I had anorexia that I wouldn't go near. So your burgers, your pizzas, your pastries, your ice cream, those were all the foods that I binged on because it was like I restricted for 18 months. So it was like, well, now I know I'm not going to keep it down. I'll just eat whatever the fuck I want. So that desire to to have all the foods that I thought were bad is that I can eat them because I'm not going to keep them down. And obviously, it was the mental illness that I had. That obviously, that was how I justified my binges because it was like I'll eat everything that I know in normal life. Obviously, my life wasn't normal, but it's like if I was normal, I wouldn't eat them foods. So because I had this eating disorder, I can eat all these foods. So I would literally like someone would normally wake up and be like, oh, fancy pizza today. I would literally wake up with that in my head, and then it would be the restriction all day. Wait for my parents to go to bed, and then I would sit with that feeling of I'm going to binge on this today, and I'd wait until they went to bed, and then I would. So it was like this.
Yeah.
I was rewarding myself with all the foods that I demonized because I was good and I didn't eat during the day.
Yeah, and
So,
exactly. I think I think there's many facets potentially to what drove you to that point. Body image one we'll talk about later was probably a big one, but in essence, judging foods as good and bad was a facilitator in
yeah,
that. And further down the line as well, I want to discuss something called non-hunger eating, and actually the way we view food as a reward, which is fine sometimes, but it can almost become ingrained, and it's not the healthiest of way to reward ourselves. I don't believe too often.
yeah,
Um, but I think the next point I was pondering, right, number two, body acceptance promotes healthy eating. And then, again, we'll go into more detail of this on the body image side. But what I have recognized, right, is that most people choose to lose weight because they don't like the way they look and they want to align to the subjective norms in narratives that society has thrown at them. And then they have no desire to particularly serve their body well. There's a disconnection there. So what I do with clients a lot is I start to help them accept their body as it is now, right? And this isn't like a case of you have no desire to change. This is right.
mhm,
You are where you are now. Let's accept your body, because when you accept it, your desire to serve it better, that one vessel that
yeah,
is looking after you, goes up. So then most people tend to want to eat more nutrient dense food most of the time. Would you agree then that when you began to accept your body as it was, your reasons for eating became more health based?
100%, 100%. I think when I finally I say like the rose tinted glasses. Obviously, it was in a completely like a bad way. But when the rose tinted glasses came off, and I saw myself for how everybody else saw me, and it wasn't like that desire to have a flatter stomach, or if I sat down and I had a crease, I had to get rid of it. It was like, yeah, when I realised that I was underweight and I was ill, and although it took another, I think like 3 or 4 years for me to actually finally I say recovered. I always recovered like what is recovered, but when the healthier eating habits and the positive relationship that I started to have with food, I think when you realize where you're at and you know that you have a road to go down, it's like that road is less long. I think when you're doing it for yourself and you're not doing it to look a certain way, you're just doing it to make yourself feel better, like cognitively, obviously, like look better, feel better, like a variety of things. But it is all to, like you said, the vessel that you're in, you've got it for the rest of your life. So Don't
So
fuck it up. Don't abuse it, because ultimately you're going to reap the repercussions of it
mm,
at some point on your journey, whether that be now or in the long term. So
yeah,
yeah,
I think that was a firm yes on that one, which is amazing.
yeah,
So we've had basically the 5 pieces of advice. We've had point one was we're identifying there are no good or bad foods. We're working on food morality. Number two, we're talking about body acceptance, which can promote eating for health as opposed to primarily for how we look. Number three, um, this is more around a kind of unconditional permission to eat, and it's basically saying that you can eat what you want, right? And when I discuss this initially with clients, they basically shit themselves like, whoa, 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 you can't tell me to do that because I'll go swim in a bath of Nutella, right? And I'm like, listen, when
yeah,
we work through this layered cake, right? When we get people working on food morality and starting to accept their body, still possibly with the desire to change how it physically looks, and wanting to eat more healthily, all of a sudden that term unconditional permission becomes, well, I actually want to eat nutrient dense food most of the time, and then we absolutely normalize the moderate intake of less nutritious foods in a flexible approach. So,
yeah.
what are your thoughts on unconditional permission, and briefly, how did that impact you positively when you recognize that?
I think the one of the biggest things for me when I was started out on the recovery journey, and more so when I was in like an eating disorder unit when they were reintroduced to me. I think it was I was about 23 when I was basically learning how to eat again, and obviously one of my triggers for binging was that feeling as soon as I felt like I was full. I think that was like a real like head fuck for me. So initially it was the eating the little and often, and I think that's very much something that, again, going back to like modern society and what society has drummed into us, it's 3 meals a day, 3 meals a day. That's it. And it's like, set that aside. And it's like, when you say to someone you eat 3 meals a day, or you can eat little and often, they're like, what does that mean? It's like, well, instead of having your normal three sizes, if you halved every meal, you can have 6 meals a day. And that way I say, but obviously when it comes to like the gym perspective, it's almost like your body is a furnace, and you want to constantly like
Yeah,
like the log, put the logs in the fire, and it's like you break up them 3 meals or however you see fit. Obviously everyone's lifestyle is different, and work plays a massive part of that, but who's to say that society's right in eating 3 meals a day? Like, is that right? Not really, because everyone's individual. So I think in terms of the doing things that work for you, and obviously again some people prefer to eat 3 meals a day because that's how they've eaten like their whole lives, but other people, based on however many factors involved in their own life, it could be easier for them to break that up. So if you feel hungry, eat.
yeah,
It's like there's a difference to the like, are you fully hydrated, or is the hunger pains, is that water? And making sure that if you are adequately hydrated and you're still hungry, then eat. And then obviously yeah, everyone's got an allotted amount of calories in the day, but who's to say eat it in 2 meals, eat it in 3 meals, eat in 4 meals? It's your own choice. If it works for you, do it.
I think,
So
yeah, you're right. I think unconditional permission, um, for me is you're right, is a eating in a frequency and amount that works for your life, but actually it's giving yourself permission to fundamentally eat what you want, and
mm,
that's what we're talking about here. That if you genuinely sit back and go, I want that chocolate bar tonight, go have the freaking chocolate bar, because the
mm,
irony there is when we give ourselves unconditional permission to eat all foods with an awareness that we want to serve our body most of the time with nutrient dense foods, we tend to be able to have way better control over these less nutritious foods like chocolate and pizza, because we
yeah,
recognize,
yeah,
we go, right, I don't have to eat as much of this as I can right now because I am restricting it tomorrow. When you're aware that I can have this whenever I want,
mm-hmm,
over time, a learned behavior is you start to eat an amount you genuinely want, and most of the time you have a far better ability to stop as opposed to
yeah,
carry on. So for me, that's food, or unconditional permission, and it is an interesting one for you that you know that I'd like to hear your thoughts, because a lot of people don't even consider this, right? And this is out of an awesome book around eating behaviors I read a while ago, that all meals or snacks eventually have to come to an end. And this is a really cool mindset shift I say to a lot of clients. So would you rather, with the knowledge that you can have any foods whenever you want, would you rather finish that meal in a place of fullness and contentment that was a nice meal, or would you rather continue and go into a state of over fullness where it's uncomfortable and also potentially a feeling of guilt? And when
Yeah.
you recognize that the meal will have to stop at some time and you can have that food again whenever you want, I
Yeah.
think that's a really powerful thought to help people stop eating most of the time when they're actually full. I don't know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. No. That is a good. I think, like you said, I think a lot of people seem to, they can eat like the foods that they deem healthy and good. They can eat that in that moderation. But I think when it comes to the foods that are potentially like demonized, there does seem to be this like uncontrollable like feeling around it, is in like I can't just have one biscuit, I'll eat the whole fucking packet. Well, I think like there's always, it seems to be that. I think if you can make that switch in your head and like, yeah, you are enjoying it, or like I know you said, oh, I don't want this meal to end, like I think that's always a saying, but obviously that could just be that it's, if you're going out for a special meal, it's just a meal that you don't want to end because you're enjoying the company and whatever. But yeah, no, I think that's not really something that approach I hadn't really thought of, but it makes sense, isn't it? It's all about like the mindset and how you view that food. So yeah, that's
And I think that's the point. Like most people, from my experience, the cycle of binging or overeating for a lot of people is, like I say, that perceived restriction. Okay, so that headspace is they try not to eat something because they have been told by diet culture or social media that that's bad,
yeah,
quote unquote. So then they naturally think about that thing more. We know that people who have done more diets or who restrict foods, it's I call it it's like the Adam and Eve thingy, where like God
yeah,
said, "Don't eat the apple," and all
yeah.
they thought about was eating the apple, right?
I've spoken about this before. I think in terms of like as an evolutionary standpoint, we've advanced so much as a human race and as a society in terms of like technological advances, but like within our own heads, even like it's like we say to kids, like don't do that, don't touch that. So they don't hear the don't, it's
Yeah,
touch that. And but
yeah,
we are no matter what our ages, we are still
yeah,
mentally we're exactly the same. And obviously, like you said, when you read in the paper, I know, like I don't want to mention papers, but there are specific papers where they seemingly have like a demonized food of the week. Eggs are bad, eggs are good.
yeah,
Eggs are bad, eggs are good. Like it's like I said, it's just like you
yeah,
read one thing and like yeah, like sweetener is better for you than sugar, but now sweetener causes cancer. It's like it's just
exactly.
like this constant thing of in like just yeah. I think but I think it's like you said, the like the point of like yeah don't eat that because it's bad. It's like then all you got in your head is cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
I could really eat
And
one of them now.
and
So
that cycle I'm talking about is people try and restrain from something, eventually, understandably, cave and eat that thing, which is absolutely normal, but they feel like it isn't, and then they feel they've either blown their diet,
yeah
so they almost self-soothe through that food that they felt they couldn't eat because it gives a brief higher response on the dopamine in the reward
yeah yeah
brain,
yeah
and or like I said earlier, because they perceive that as I have to deprive myself of that tomorrow, I'll eat it all now and go again tomorrow.
yeah
And when we unpick that mindset, which is what I really talk about with unconditional permission, they start to reduce the food guilt they feel when they eat something as innocent as a bar of chocolate. And the
yeah
irony is then, the paradox, and there's a really cool quote, James, I got from a client of mine. She said, when we went through this process of unpicking a relationship with food, she recognized that a lot of her eating around chocolate was from perceived restriction of it. She didn't actually enjoy eating chocolate as much as she did. And when we unpicked her relationship with food, and in her case, chocolate, she was eating less of it than before she started with me, but not from a place of forced restriction, but from a liberation of, I can eat that when I want.
yeah
And she started listening. She was aware. Like she took a pause and she was like, I do want a bit of chocolate today. Or no, actually, I don't want it tomorrow. And that's really empowering. And that's what I think when we talk about diet culture, that isn't spoken about, that liberation and unpicking. So that's number 4.
yeah
This we said, and then number 5, and this is something I want to throw at you as well. Your thoughts on this. So, and this aligns with fad diets, right?
right
Number 5 is the difference between feeling full and feeling satisfied. Okay, so to me, feeling full is a genuine physiological response of your hunger and fullness hormone saying we have enough calories and nutrition to serve us at the moment. Okay, that's feeling full. Feeling satisfied is a more pleasure-based response on the brain that says, I enjoyed that food, there's a hit dopamine, brilliant. The problem is, when people start to go on free meal plans, which most people aren't, and I'm not a dietitian, I'm a nutritionist, aren't allowed to prescribe anyway, or they do fad diets, which, impose different restrictions, they're eating in a way that they don't enjoy, right? So they may be eating the friggin' high protein chicken, broccoli, rice, they may feel full, but because they genuinely wanted, I don't know, tuna in a wrap with sweet chili sauce, often they end up not only eating the thing that makes them full, but because their brain wants to enjoy the food, they eat the thing they wanted originally on top of that, which leads to an overconsumption of calories. So my point here is, when we get people eating what they want, what they enjoy, they tend to eat less of it because they're not just feeling full, they're feeling satisfied. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. I said, like, when I have online clients, and obviously when I'm training like new people, they're more focused on the meal plan than the training plan. And they were like, can you write me out a meal plan for the week, like based on however many calories I need? I'm just like, no. I was like, what I get them to do as part of like the initial like consultation phase is give me a food diary, like keep a diary for like a week, so I get to know exactly, like, just be, whether they're being fully honest, probably not, but be honest with me and write down exactly what you eat in a week, and then you can look at it, and then I'll try and adapt it to fit what you're currently eating. So it's not so much of a massive like, oh fuck, I don't even like that, but because he's told me to happy put it, I'm going to eat it. It's like, that's totally wrong. Like that, there's no, like you said, that goes back to the fad. I'll do it for a month. Oh, he hasn't written in there that I like X, but I was eating that a couple of times a week. And then like you'll be eating that and thinking, oh, I wish I was having this. It's like there's no longevity in it. So like, I very rarely say, like, will you write me out a meal plan? And no, like I will help.
Can't anyway, can we?
No,
at the end of the day.
no. So like I can help make like recommendations on improvements to what you're currently eating, or try and make it even more nutritious. Or if you're lacking in what you're currently eating, if you're lacking in protein, there's a way of implementing more protein into what you're currently eating. But to create a meal plan from scratch, it's never going to fucking work.
You're right, and that comes back to, and I'll discuss this in a bit. And the final point, a better way of thinking is, people are shook, right, when I say to them, you have absolute autonomy over what you eat here. I give you the control because you're a wonderful individual who will have their own eating preferences, their own times they can eat, and all I do is help them discover, potentially, if they need it, protein sources that they enjoy, meals that they enjoy. And that is a very novel feeling for them, and it can be scary in the short term, but when they realize that they have control, it changes the game. Okay, so that's point 5 of the sub points with the main point 2. So we've discussed diet culture. I've given a few pieces of advice which you agree on. The third big point here is body image, right? And I want to throw my 2 pence in before you come back with this. So for me, generally, well, not generally, as a species, we have evolved to align to the subjective norms of our tribe, right? This is the way I always put it. The problem is, since the agricultural revolution, when we got smart and started to create culture, our tribe is now 8 billion strong, and through social media, which is basically a highlight reel to make money for the big businesses. So what I say to people is, imagine a big circle, right? And that's all the bodies in the world, all the body shapes, which are wonderfully different. There is no perfect body shape here. And a little dot in the middle of that circle is the body shapes that you predominantly see on Instagram, like the 0.01% of people who have a collection of genetically gifted in the sense of muscle promotion and leanness, and they probably utilize lighting, oil, posture, and it's probably their job to do that thing. And then we, as the general public, we're exposed to that very often. It's quite extreme, and we see that as the normal, right? And that can obviously apply to as well to like magazines, maybe years ago and stuff. But would you tend to agree with how that can spiral body image pressures when people initially weren't that bothered about their body shape?
100%. 100%. That's obviously like people, especially at the minute, obviously cost of living crisis and stress levels are through the roof. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be just like scrolling across social media, and obviously whether it be, not that I'm really big on TikTok, but it's obviously TikTok is the new one in it, but obviously like Instagram's kind of like the OG really. But yeah, you said like the people that are on there are people who are looking to get into shape or to or whatever, they're going to be searching for people that are, like you said, they're genetically gifted, Photoshop, and because it's not clearly stated in the pictures and the videos and whatever, like that's it. You have this completely unrealistic, like, oh, if I work really hard, I could look like that. No, you won't. No, you won't. And it's like, and then like you would say it to someone like when you, what's the reason for going to gym? I want to look like Chris Bumstead. Good luck. And they're like, well, no, mate. Honestly, you can't. I probably train. I train a lot. I don't look nothing like him. Like you won't look like him because you don't have his genetics. You don't have his lifestyle. You don't have access to everything that he's got. They're like they said, you only like Instagram. Most of the time, you only ever put up the pictures that are you in the best possible light at the best angle, and yeah, exactly that. And I said it's not real. It isn't real. And like you said, it just creates this like toxic image within people that I'm not good enough. Like I do all this.
Do you know what's interesting, mate? I think sadly we often add to the fire that burns us, and what I mean by that is we are aware often that our negative body image is used on these apps is due to what we see. But then we play the game through social pressure often, and I try and be aware of this in my own world and don't do it, but to find the best angles. Do you know what I mean? Like the highlight.
Yeah.
And that we fuel that, we self-serve it. And I think, like you touched on earlier, mate, then like, you know, we are 8 billion strong, but unless you're an identical twin, we all have different wonderful genetics. We all have different skeletal structures, muscle insertion points, muscle potential, fat site storage. Like people think, sadly, that they can be carved out of stone. Like we can do. And this is where the whole sad industry of having work done around body shapes to fit.
That's what I was going to mention. That obviously the extreme version of it. Yeah,
it's sad, isn't it? So I think body image to me is massively fueled by social media. And a really good tip for anyone listening to this that I say to my clients is do an audit of your social media following. Right, like as you're scrolling, if you look at an image or an account, whether they're meaning to make you feel like shit or not, if you feel shit when you see that body shape, if that's the only thing that it's serving you on, then unfollow them. Like clean your social media. I always say to my clients, like follow evidence-based educational accounts which are talking about reducing body image pressures, which have credible qualifications. But unfortunately, people tend to follow the extreme bro influencers or women who are just constantly booty pics, them in the gym, etc. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I say it goes back to like one of this 8-week course that I've got coming out soon. One of my pillars of mental health is the relationship you have with your social circle. So it's obviously like I coined the phrase again. Obviously, people that you know, it's like are the people within your social circle, are they, whatever your goal is in life, are they helping put logs on the fire or are they pissing on it? And I think that's the exact same thing. Like people like have the assumption that everyone they follow on their Instagram is their mate. And obviously they're not. But it's like you said, if they are making you feel more insecure or they're making you feel like unmotivated, I've done the same thing. I think when I first started going to the gym, it was like 8 years ago, I literally followed every single bodybuilder, aesthetic person, and I think the only ones that I think I follow now, like I obviously not in a aspire to be like, but I like Chris Bumstead. I like obviously that his YouTube channel and how he talks and stuff. He seems like pretty down to earth, and he is motivational. Like to watch him go on his like the prep that he does, it's just like it's a different world to me. But I understand how much dedication, and it's more of a respect thing rather than a aspire to be thing. So it's like that's where you need, like you said, you need to have that talk with yourself and have that, like you said, whether it's a cleanse or however you see fit. But like you said, if you look at someone and be like, God, I wish I had a bum. I wish I had his arms. It's like just unfollow. Like I said, you can only do you.
My account, mate. When I look at who I follow, I know it's different because obviously I understand evidence-based practice. I'm in the world of nutrition, but I don't follow anyone who is literally just slapping photos of themselves shredded all the time. I follow like interesting people, like evidence-based people. Like I know people I don't know personally, like Alan Aragons, your Lanes, all those kind of people. And there's also people, like And then Ben Carpenter's
Yeah.
another great one. And then I also follow people I do know who I respect in the industry like you. And actually, I don't ever scroll through my social media and get that feeling of body envy because I chose not to follow them years ago. So yeah, I think body image is a really important topic, and I think this can lead us now nicely onto our final point then of this chat, which is a better way of thinking, right? And I have three sub points that I was thinking here, right? Number one, we've agreed, haven't we, that let's end going on diets. Let's end just going on a food tracking app. A food tracking app can play a part in someone's journey if that's what they want to do with the right premise and context around. It's a tool to educate you and still dealing with food awareness. But a massive thing that I want to touch on is people should start to look at their driving factors with what we call non-hungry eating. Right, James? So this sounds really obvious, but we either eat when we're physiologically hungry or we eat when we're not hungry. And, you know, a lot of women especially come to me, 60 to 70% when we break it down and look at it, their eating can come from a non-hungry state.
Yeah.
And this can be things like you said earlier, you said viewing food as a reward. It could be emotional/stress eating. It could be boredom eating, habits. It could be things you said as well. When we're younger, we learn you finish your plate or you don't eat that. Okay?
Yeah.
It could be lack of education around nutrition, unhealthy beliefs around different foods. When we start to actually recognize and help people discover what is driving you to eat in a non-hungry state, and then start to come in and put in new behaviors to override that, we massively reduce people's non-hungry eating. We never want to remove it. Like if I go past an ice cream shop near me that I fucking love, I don't give a shit if I'm hungry or not. I'm having that ice cream. But it's a game of frequency. Do you know what I mean? Like,
100%.
we're trying to pull that down. And I think that is why one of many reasons why fad diets fail. They don't look at your root causes of overeating. So that was a big thing for me. And then also beginning to help people reintroduce themselves to feelings of hunger and fullness, because we know that the more diets someone has done, the more they disconnect with hunger and fullness hormones. And when you start to, I use a scale, the hunger and fullness scale on 1 to 10, and I get people basically, if they're using a food awareness diary as opposed to tracking food temporarily, I get them to start to mark on a scale of 1 to 10.
Like, I've got it. Yeah.
0 is starving, 10 is overfull, 2 is like hungry, 5 is neutral, and 8 is full. I try and say to people, stop existing on the two extremes. Like, let's start getting you used to existing when you are generally between neutral and hungry, eat, and stop eating most of the time when you're between neutral and full.
Yeah.
And that's a really empowering thing, because people then have the tools to walk around in everyday life without needing to track food most of the time. They're recognizing, am I hungry? Am I full? I can have this food whenever I want. I pulled down my reasons for non-hungry eating. And it sounds like that's something you've brought into your coaching as well.
Yeah, so essentially, like when we do like the check-ins with people, and obviously you go through the obviously like the long list of things, you usually see that they are hungriest, or they struggle with their food. And it's normally the biggest trigger of that is their sleep. It usually there's a correlation between if they've had a crap night's sleep, their hunger for the next day is like off the scale, and it's like, there you go. There's and it's like when but they've given me that information, and then when you're telling it to them, and they're like, oh yeah, it is. It's like I'm teaching you things that you already know. I'm just telling you. Like, but I think that's obviously where
needed, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like therapy. You know what I mean?
100%.
Sometimes we have to get it out in writing, and then have it thrown back at us. But you're absolutely right, mate. There was a big study that came out, I think it was the start of this year or last year, on sleep, and I think there's a stat like people who sleep under 6.5 hours compared to people who sleep over 7.5 hours, on average, eat like 300 to 400 more calories a day, and generally make less nutritious choices. So that, you're absolutely right. That's another driver of non-hungry eating. So my point there was, let's start helping people look at driving factors of non-hungry eating. Let's start recognizing when they're full and hungry and reintroducing them to that. And then as well here, it was, and I think you'll enjoy this one, readdressing your whys. All right. So for me, we discussed, because of body image pressures, that most people's reason to look at their nutrition and potentially also go to the gym is a distaste of their body. They want to change the way they look. But that then cycles into like binge eating, poor relationship with food. You know, they view their success on the scales which don't change how they want them to, so they stop and then start again. Whereas if we start to help people primarily focus on the benefits to physical and mental health, the investment in their body, which we spoke about before. The irony is, because you uphold those behaviors, as a secondary byproduct, you actually change your body shape anyway. You
Yeah.
know, do you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I say like I'm very much like when I don't train many women now, so I don't more obviously I'm going down the like the eating disorder, the mental health side of things. So in terms of like my clientele is reducing while I'm trying to obviously go
Niche.
down like
Yeah.
the different niche. So, but I know when I first started the training women, like see the amount of people the amount of women that were obsessed with the scales, and it was like the first thing that you end up having whether it was a consultation phase or the check-ins every week, and it's like the same. I would just feel myself like regurgitating the same information to new people. But it's like if you spent 6 months with me and you were 9 stone when you first started and you wanted to get down to 8 stone, the scales are in the bin. The scales are irrelevant. But at the end of that 6 months with me, if you got into that dress, them jeans that you felt were too tight, but training with me, eating, you are now you fit the dress, you fit the jeans, you feel you look good, like all the angles are looking good. You jumped on the scales and you put on half a stone. So you went from 9 stone to 9.5 stone. Would you be bothered? No.
No, exactly.
Weight's
That's a good
irrelevant.
point.
Weight's
Really
irrelevant.
good point. Yeah, you're right. And yeah,
But that's it. You actually see the cogs turning, and they're like,
oh shit, yeah. But it's education, isn't it? Like you're absolutely right. We know that, especially if someone's lifting weights. I've had clients. Most clients do lose overall weight because they predominantly drop clearly more body fat and water weight than they gain muscle mass. But I've had a few clients who have almost been like very low on muscle mass, but also very
yeah,
lean. And yeah, I had a guy, and I've had a girl. The guy I think gained about 9 pounds in 12 months, and the girl about 4 or 5 in about the same amount of time. But when I did this thing where I did a poll years ago and I put the two pictures next to each other, and I was like, which one is the weight loss photo? And they all, nearly like 100% of people clicked on the one where they were leaner. I was like,
yeah,
they weigh more there. And people were like, fuck off.
yeah, yeah,
That is
yeah,
mad. So you're absolutely right. I think it's readdressing why, like for me, mate, I like to tap into behavior change. And I think you'll probably agree with this on a more extreme level. Clearly, when I was young and I was influenced around pressures, body image pressures, and I wasn't qualified in nutrition, I did it for all the wrong reasons. But now,
mhm,
the last, whatever, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I've really primarily focused on a health front with this. But the irony is, by social standards, in terms of muscle mass and leanness, I'm in the leanest and muscular position in my life without
yeah,
focusing on it primarily because by wanting to improve my health and viewing that, I've just applied the principles so
yeah,
consistently that byproducts happen. And I think that's my message to people, that the people who succeed want to change their behaviors around nutrition and movement and are invested in the journey
yeah,
as opposed to the outcome for health. And then the outcome of body change happens anyway,
yeah,
doesn't it?
exactly. Yeah, but I think that literally goes back to why the diet culture is so strong, because people don't want to fall in love with the process. They just want the results, and then that's where what we've probably been following each other for a couple
Yeah.
of years, and it's
Yeah.
like that's why I think there has been so many similarities, like the things that you post and things you put on your stories. It's just like I say that. Oh, that's how I say it in a different way, but the message is the exact same thing. I think we're very much on the that you try and get your clients to fall in love with the process rather than focusing on the end result. Because
It's a fucking good process, isn't it? Like, let's be
yeah,
clear. I genuinely thrive off going to gym lifting weights. I genuinely thrive off predominantly putting nutrient-dense food into my body. But then I also regularly, and I think you're the same as this, I actively put my less nutritious food on my social media. Like that's what I do because I have that daily,
yeah,
and it can work in a balance, and it needs to be there. We know that flexible approach to nutrition in the long term actually achieves better BMI scores, better relationships with food, and better relationships with body image.
yeah,
So, we're similar there, aren't we? But that, like you said, people bring it in the wrong way, not through their own fault, but through the way they're told to, which is shit basically through most of social media. And
yeah,
they believe that this has to be a miserable process, but actually, I wouldn't change it. If someone said to me I could have the muscle mass I have now without lifting weights, without going on my bike, without running, doing a bit of running, I've started recently.
you still do
I say
it.
no. I
Yeah,
still do it because it's
you'd be
it's the
bored.
grind,
But
isn't
what
it?
would you do? What would you do
Yeah,
instead? Yeah,
exactly. Exactly, mate. 100%. So look, I think we've talked through some really good stuff here. I think what I want to finish on is I want a quick statement of how you would advise people, maybe a 30-second statement, and then I also wanted to just briefly touch on what you've got coming out. Is it in July or August?
I'm,
So
I'm
fire
hoping
away.
hoping by the end of July. Yeah,
Okay.
essentially. Yeah. So what 30 second
Give me a
about
summary. Like, what would you say to people who are sat here now thinking, I hate my body, I'm trying to lose diets. What would you say to
to reach out to one of us. I think that'd be the easiest way to do it. I think in terms of like it's gonna be very hard to say to someone, forget what you've read and heard for the last X amount of years of your life, but that isn't the only way to do it. There is an easier way that you can fit it into your current lifestyle that is not this massive impact. And like, yes, it's not as sexy as these like miracle fads that you can get whatever in like a couple of weeks or in a month. It's like it's a longer process, but the journey that you'll go on, you'll never need anybody else again. So like, so what would yeah, do you want to yo-yo for the rest of your life, or do you want to invest 6 to 12 months of your time in someone with the same sort of message as us, whereby in after that 6 to 12 months, it's not even about the end result. It's the lessons and the steps you've learned along the way that you won't need anyone because you will know the process. So if you ever did fall off the wagon for whatever reason, mental health, bereavement, job loss, you know how to get back on. You just follow the steps that you've already learned. Whereas obviously the diet fads, yeah, you may look good for a month. You'll feel shit. You'll feel unfulfilled. You'll be miserable. Your relationships with your family, your friends will suffer, and then you'll just go back.
Yeah.
It's like so that like that. Yeah, there is an easier way. Well, maybe it's not an easier way. There is a better way. That's the yeah. There is a better way to do it. That it may not be as sexy. It may require a lot more of your time and commitment, but the benefits in the long run outweigh it. So
It's looking through a different lens, isn't it? A lens that is not based on what social media tells people to do. But on a final note, then, let me maybe before we summarize with your new thing coming out, my input there, where I totally agree. There's certain questions I always ask people when they're doing a diet. I'm like, can you see yourself doing this for the rest of your life? Is this improving or making your mental health worse? Is this sustainable? Are you being given autonomy? Are you being helped to look at your factors and reasons for eating a non-hungry state and overruling them? And where is your relationship with food up to? Because you're absolutely right, the process is slow. You know, a lot of people may physically change their body shape through an awful way, and we're very quick to congratulate people's body shapes without actually having insight into their psyche. I've had a lot of people come to me who actually aren't here to lose weight. They're physically very lean, but they've decimated their mental health and relationship with food, and everyone was congratulating, and that almost fueled
yeah,
this fire. And
yeah.
you may feel that. So I think it's a recognition as well that we have to be careful when we congratulate people for body shape change, because often it comes at the compromise of mental health.
Yeah, 100%. As I
So
said, when I first started losing weight, when I left school and my eating disorder, my anorexia had started, and I'd meet up with my friends once a week or once every couple of weeks. Oh, mate, you're looking well.
yeah, and I'm
Like
so delicate now, mate. Yeah,
red rag to a ball.
yeah, and I'm really delicate unless I have been on part of someone's journey and I know their psyche. One, I actually never congratulate people's looks anymore, and that sounds really mean, but I do that for both reasons. Like, we're trying to
I
move this
get
emphasis away. I say words like "you're looking stronger,"
yeah,
you're looking
yeah.
healthy in yourself. It's trying to use non-physical terms to to set the change that we want, I guess. But on a final note, then, mate, what's this? Briefly explain this new program that's coming out of yours at the end of July.
Yeah, so it's essentially obviously where it's a little bit different. Well, it's completely different to what I'm used to doing in terms of being like an online coach and a like a one-to-one PT in the gym. Obviously, this is going to be it's an 8-week online mental health course that covers all the 7 pillars. Obviously, I probably sound like the Liver King with his was it the yeah what was his like 11 atonements, testaments, whatever it was. But I'm not like that. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But so it's obviously like I probably spent the last 18 months probably like thinking about all the 7 key factors of how I've improved my mental health over the last 8 years. And obviously, essentially, it boils down to understanding what mental health means to you, the factors influencing your mental health positively and negatively. Obviously, there's your mindset. So again, that's another important one. There's your nutrition, which obviously again you are what you eat, essentially. Then you've got your exercise, and then you've got the two, which a lot of people don't realise. It's probably the relationship you have with your social circle is a really big one for me, and then it's the relationship you have with yourself. So it's going to be, there's like eight videos to watch. So there'll be a different video every week, and then you will schedule a one-to-one with me. Obviously, if it's close to me, I'll come, and if you're close to me, like geographically, then obviously we can do the one-to-ones together. Otherwise, it'll be on like a Zoom call to basically just go through. Obviously, they'll make notes. I'll set them a little task to do at the end of each video, and it's about going through what they thought, how they've applied, like what I said. So yeah, and obviously, you're not going to have a massive improvement over 8 weeks, but it's about understanding, like you said, like the little nuggets of information you say to people, and you see the, like, haven't thought of that. So and then it's obviously after that 8 weeks, it's about obviously working with them however they want, whether it's once a month, once a week. It's obviously person dependent. Then we will just try and make sure that they implement these steps going forward. And obviously, like, again, it's taken me 8 years. I had my eating disorder for 10 years, and it's taken me 8 years to get where I am now. So there is no quick fix. But like I said on the podcast that I've been on, and probably like you said about the gym thing, is I'd do it all again. I would do it all again for what I've learned about myself, learned about other people, learned about mental health, and what I've learned more about eating disorders and understanding the psychology behind it, and obviously the mindset and the routines that you get into. And it's about making that flip and turning them negatives into a positive. And essentially that's what I've got coming up.
Yeah, and that I know I've watched you before this is coming out. Yours is very much on a similar tone with me, with reasons why, and you've got a massive mental health focus. So I think, look, anyone who's watching this now or watches it on playback, if you are struggling with your relationship with food, and you want to sustainably lose weight, if that's what you need, or even just improve your relationship with food, drop me or James a message. And if you have any questions, even if it's not relating to coaching, we love what we do, don't we, mate?
Yeah,
and we will answer in
100%.
depth with no expectation of any money. We just want to help. So look, mate, I've really enjoyed this.
Yep.
I think what we said earlier, we'll probably pen one of these in again soon. So yeah, you have a great night, mate, and I appreciate you coming on.
I'll catch you soon. Appreciate it.
See you later.
See you later.
Bye now.
Bye bye.